Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery here. It's a beautiful Monday morning. Today is March 31st, 2025. We get together most weekday mornings at this time, 8 o'clock Central, to talk about strategies, tips, techniques, sharing success stories, and supporting each of you. We have a very important training today, and it's going to be some larger picture of discussion of get to know us. We want to make sure that there's no confusion or lack of clarity of the roles of the nonprofit, the for-profit, the resellers. And then based upon some communication that happened over the weekend, we're going to dive deep dive into frequently asked questions, FAQs. Now, there are some new components of information, so please pay attention here and we'll go through that. So first, let me introduce 509 Pacific. So 509 Pacific is a 501c3 nonprofit. As we've talked to many of you who are resellers, we've encouraged many of you to set up kind of a dual entity approach, to have a nonprofit and a for-profit. Don't have to do that, but that's certainly the model that we follow. So our nonprofit is called 509 Pacific. It's real. It's credentialed. It's approved by the IRS as a 501c3, and we use it to apply for grants and to administer grants. Now, our primary point of contact at 509 Pacific is Madison Hope. Her title is funding coordinator. We're going to be hiring additional funding coordinators when our new building is done. We've talked on prior trainings. We're building a new office building. It's going to be here on the same property, on the same campus. And once we have the new building built, we'll have a training room, training facility for those of you to come in that want to come in. But right now, Madison is the funding coordinator. There will be additional funding coordinators as we have additional office space. The best way to reach any of us is on the text line for support. And when I say that, that doesn't mean call this number because it's not answered live. But you can text 903-347-8042 if you have a question about process or about a client. So encourage you. And let's even highlight that. Well, I guess I can't because we're not in editing mode, but make sure that you have this number written down. This is the number that you'll want to use when you need quick response. Some of you get a little frustrated with having trouble getting a hold of us. Well, for all of our funding advisors, which I'll talk about in a moment, we all work off of a calendar, a scheduled basis. Now, you can call 509 Pacific at any time that you want, but there's only so many people to answer the phones, and if you don't leave a message, you probably won't get a call back. So the main number for 509 Pacific is 903-352-3390. That's a different number than the text line. This is for texts. This is to talk to someone. If you want to email Madison, her email is madison@509pacific.org. And to no surprise, the website for 509 Pacific is 509pacific.org. Now, one other note, we use a CRM. Most businesses use what's called a CRM, a customer relationship manager. It's like a database to keep all communication organized. We use a software called Keep, K-E-A-P, used to be called Infusion. But the point is, the emails from our CRM are not going to come from Madison's email address. They're going to come from support@guaranteedfunding.org. So you may want to have clients whitelist that. All right, so this is one of the two entities, one of the two. Now let's go to the second of the two, business paralegal. It is not a nonprofit. It is a for-profit. We're licensed, we're bonded, we're insured, we're a collection agency. Sometimes some of you will call business paralegal and you'll ask for Madison, but she doesn't work at business paralegal. So we have a main number for business paralegal, just like there is a main number for 509 Pacific, but it's a different number because it's a different organization. This one's answered live by our team of operators because we're collecting money, so there's more people to answer the phone there. But again, texting is great. Best way to get quick responses or quicker responses when you have a process question, or let's say you're one of our resellers and need an update on a client, best to text. Now, significant change. I have a new email address. Before, I was on a common email platform that was shared with others. No longer. So my new email is T, which is my first initial, Montgomery, my last name, at bizparalegal.com. And that is also our new website. So this is new. So if you email somewhere else, I probably won't see it, probably won't respond. This is my new email, and the website is up and live. Okay, so we have our nonprofit, we have our for-profit, but the most important part of our organizational structure are our resellers. So let's go down and talk about our resellers. So we're continuing to grow the number of resellers. We're about 500 now, and that's great. The problem with growth is that it's hard for us to manage questions, comments, concerns from 500 resellers. So we're actually building out state directors, which we'll talk in a few minutes about. So we're going to have state directors of which the resellers report to. What do resellers do? Resellers build awareness of the grant, and we'll talk more about the grant and what it does when we get into FAQs. But the grant provides free fundable shelf corporations. Now, when I say free, that's correct, but we need to understand the process, which we're going to go through. I think anytime that we've seen concerns or questions or frustration out in the marketplace, it's people get confused, they don't understand. So that's why we're going through today in great detail to explain the parties, the processes, and resolution. If ever we don't do everything that we promised to do, shame on us. We want to address that, but we're going to talk about that here in a moment. Now, sometimes we refer to our resellers as grant coordinators. That means the same. So if you see on 509 Pacific about becoming a grant coordinator, that's the same as being a reseller. It's just kind of the mindset. It's not a difference in role. Now, what are these resellers? Resellers are independent business owners who set their own pricing for Fundable Shelf Corps. We had an email chain going around yesterday where some of the people were frustrated, frankly, not with us, but they didn't realize it wasn't with us. They were frustrated with the reseller that introduced them. So each reseller operates independently. There's no cost to be a reseller, which is a little bit later down here. But we provide our resellers our client agreement, and then the resellers edit it. They can change the pricing, which is the point of this first sentence here. And then, so resellers are reselling the Fundable Shelf corporations. We don't charge up front for the Fundable Shelf Corps, but some of the resellers do, and that was some of the confusion. That's up to you. If you're a reseller, if you want to charge the client something up front, you can. You don't have to. We don't. Now, understand the construct or the background of our resellers. We have all different types of resellers. Some are attorneys, some are accountants, some are in the lending world, some are just stay-at-home moms. We've got a couple of strippers. They come from all different walks of life. But most are part-time. So could someone be a reseller as a full-time endeavor? Sure, but most, this is a side gig for most of them. And it's extra income. It's gig work, if you will. The average reseller is again just part-time, helping on average one client a day. So with one client a day, they're earning $5,000 up front. So it's not get rich quick. It's not that Jimmy's on here. This isn't the type of money that Jimmy makes. But for a side income, extra $5,000 a day, not so bad, right? And then also, our resellers make 5% of the capital raise of each client they refer in. So it's a good side income, but it's not the type of money that Charles is used to making, or Antonio or Alfonso. Side income. We're not trying to be your primary source of income. As I mentioned, there's no cost to be a reseller. There's no cost, not even a contract to sign. However, if resellers want additional resources, they can participate in what we call the reseller marketing package. So it's optional, it's not required. The RMP is where our resellers can get a landing page. It has the drip campaign, the e-signature contracts built in, so forth. There is a cost for us to set up the reseller marketing package. So if a reseller wants to participate in what we call the RMP, they will pay for it. It's just less than $1,000. However, that is refunded in full once they get the first client funded through that. Some people say, well, why don't we just offer it for free if it's going to be free anyway? Well, as soon as we start offering anything for free, then what happens is a lot of people are attracted to that, but a lot of people don't do anything with it. So it's a poor use of our time and energy and effort. So if you want the reseller marketing package, you're welcome to have it. You'll pay essentially what's a refundable deposit. We'll build that out. It'll help you close more deals, but the bottom line is then you'll be refunded once you have one client go through it. So it's not a different role, it's just the tools and technology. Any questions so far on the parties? So we have the 509 Pacific nonprofit, we have business paralegal, and we have resellers. Okay, great. Now, Jimmy has a question. So when you have individual questions, what do you want to do? You want to text the support line. So Jimmy, you want to text the support line, not address it here. Okay, so let's get into frequently asked questions. So again, we had an email string going around over the weekend, and it was great. It was an opportunity for different people to kind of voice their opinions and their perspectives. And so from that, let's go through and I've attempted to respond to what I think were the comments and concerns that came up. So first, why are there two different entities? Well, I mentioned again early on, I recommend each of you have two entities as well. You don't have to, but it makes good sense. Have a nonprofit running parallel to your for-profit. So that's most of what we recommend and teach and preach, we do ourselves. So why are there two different entities? Each serves its own purpose. The 501c3 is what we need to go secure and administer grants to build financial literacy and increase access to capital. The for-profit entity is a collection agency, right? And you might say, well, why do we need a collection agency? Because we help clients turn AR into cash. If you remember, if we're trying to get funding for clients, it's important that they be fundable. And there are what's called the 3 C's: credit, cash flow, and collateral. And so collateral is an issue that affects many small businesses. We provide clients collateral, but we convert that collateral, which comes in the form of AR, into cash. So we need this portion to be part of the ecosystem to accomplish what we need to up here. All right, so back to two different entities. I think we're good there. If there's any questions, type it in and we'll address it. So that was an easy one. Now, next, why are Fundable Shelf Corps valuable? And remember, we have these trainings on most weekdays. There's a library of past trainings on YouTube where we've gone into deeper conversations on most of these topics. But let's just say that you're new to the group and you ask, well, why would someone want a Fundable Shelf Corp? You have to back into it and say, well, if someone is looking for money, they need to qualify for it. Now, they could either pursue personal loans, which isn't what we're about, or they could pursue business loans, business funding. If you want business funding, you have to have a fundable business. And again, that's where I see frustration occur. Some people come to us and they want to skip the qualification steps. We had a gentleman that was kind of vocal yesterday. He didn't get any funding offers, and he was very frustrated. And we went back and looked at his file. He has no social security number, and he provided us a fraudulent driver's license number. So that could keep people from getting funded. The bottom line is most small business owners want and need money, but you need to have a fundable business. This isn't a game of Monopoly. What we do is not a scam, but I think some people come to us wanting a scam, if that makes sense. They want something that is beyond the way financial principles work. And then when we can't fulfill what they want, which is beyond the way financial models work, they get frustrated. So that's why financial literacy is so important, that we go out and we educate, because a lot of people don't know what you and I know. So the bottom line is, if you want business funding, you can either build a fundable business or you can buy one. So we sell fundable businesses called Fundable Shelf Corps. They are actually free, and I'll go through and describe why that's free in just a moment. But it's like with anything. Let's say that you wanted a new pair of jeans, denim jeans to wear. You could go buy some at the store, or you could make your own, right? That's true in most things in life. Well, when it comes to designing and sewing jeans, many of us wouldn't even consider that. But from business fundability, it's so much easier and quicker and faster to use a Fundable Shelf Corp. And because of the grant, which I'll go through in a minute and describe fully so there's no misunderstandings, it's actually free. So it's faster, easier, and free. All right, so now we get to the costs, because often in our society, a lot of people want yes or no answers. And often it depends, or it's a process. So again, we want to be very transparent. So that's our goal today. So first of all, for a Fundable Shelf Corp, we do not charge anything up front, but some resellers do, right? And I've clarified that. So if you just came to us and said, hey, I want to get a Fundable Shelf Corp, what's it going to cost me out of pocket? We're going to say zero. And that's a true statement. But we have almost 500 resellers now. Some of them do charge up front. Some of them mark up the cost from the wholesale amount. Some of them leave it at the wholesale. So pricing varies by reseller. Don't hold us accountable for that. That's up to the reseller. But we have a grant, and the grant reimburses the participant, whereby they end up getting the Shelf Corp for free. So here we wanted to spell out the steps. So first, a participant needs to enroll in a Fundable Shelf Corp. And that means they're going to go to one of our 500 resellers. They're going to become educated on how it works. They're going to sign a contract, a purchase agreement that's between the reseller and the participant. We'll call them the client. So that's step one. Step two is then what we're going to do is complete a finance app. Okay, so I see Kenya's asking a question. And Kenya, it's my fault. I've tried to make this clear, but I'm going to be more emphatic. We do not charge anything up front for Shelf Corps. However, resellers control their own pricing. They set their own pricing, Kenya. So some resellers charge up front. We don't. That's up to the reseller, up to the reseller, up to the reseller. So we don't charge anything up front. Some resellers do. And I know they can cause confusion if you're a client and you came through a different reseller. But that's true with Walmart and peanut butter, right? Walmart can sell peanut butter at whatever price they want. Resellers can sell Shelf Corps however they want. All right, so back down to this. So first step is a client needs to enroll with a reseller. Then, so that's agreement one. Agreement two is we're going to send them a finance application. So that's the second agreement. And that way they can get financing. We're not the lender. And we're going to talk about that more later. Like people ask, well, no one gets funding. Well, that's crazy. But we're not the lender, so we don't fund people. We're what's called a technical advisor, but we'll get to that more in a moment. So clients will enroll with a reseller to buy a shelf corp based on whatever terms those two have agreed to. Then we will send a finance application to pay for it. Then then the shelf corp will be transferred over. Takes about a week to get all the paperwork in line. And then what happens, here's where the free part comes in. So this is really important. The participants will receive a full reimbursement up to $15,000 from the grant once the participant has used it for the capital raise. So it's a reimbursement type of grant. Some people say, well, if it's a grant, why isn't it free to begin with? Well, this is the way it's set up because they want to encourage participation. They want to encourage compliance. The value of the Shelf Corp is only fully recognized if we follow through and use it for funding, and we're measuring outcomes. Okay. Is being a reseller a good thing? Well, it depends. I mean, we've already said it's not get rich quick. It's a side income. I mean, you got David on here and Danielle and France, two Frances with the same name, which is interesting. Jeff Walter. I mean, a lot of you make so much money, we can't replace your main income. But what we can do is work together to build financial literacy, help other people, and add an extra $5,000 a day to your pocket up front, plus 5% of the capital raise. So resellers, again, come from all different backgrounds. You can become a reseller. There's no contract to sign. There's no price to pay. If you want to help us, if you want to collaborate and go build financial literacy for others and increase access to capital, I think it's a great thing, but that's up to you. Now we get into this whole state director question. So what is a state director? So as I mentioned before, we're growing, which is great. Things are going really well. We're having lots of clients enroll, lots of clients get funding, program is working well. So we're scaling up. Well, we're kind of beyond our bandwidth of being able to properly support all of the resellers. So what are we doing about that? Well, we're building a new building out front so we can add more staff. We have a text line for support. So if you're a reseller and you want support, I would recommend texting. I wouldn't call, which you could, but I wouldn't recommend calling. You could email, but I wouldn't recommend emailing. I'd recommend texting. And text, what's the question or what's the concern? If it's an update on a client, I need to know where Ivory, Washington is in the process. State the name, because different people on our end could be responding to this text line. It's not always me. It's not always Madison. We have a whole group of people that are now manning this text line. So don't assume we know who you are when you text. Don't assume that we know what the question or issue is. Just clearly state what the question is or what the resolution is you're looking for. All right, so with state directors, we're adding state directors. Doesn't cost anything to be a state director. So we're not MLM, we're not a franchise, we're not selling opportunities to resellers or state directors. But what state directors do is they train and manage resellers, because resellers are kind of the grassroots educators and enrollers. The way they're paid, it's just a simple match. They're paid the same way that resellers are, so it's not complicated. We're looking for more state directors. If you're interested in being a state director, what are you going to do? Come up here and text us on the text line. Say, hey, I'd like to be a state director for Georgia, or I'd like to be a state director for Wyoming, and then we can take it from there. Now, I know a lot of you love to talk, but there's just not enough time in the day to talk to 500, soon to be 600 resellers. So text line should be first line of communication. All right, now let's go down to customer service. This is huge for us. We want 100% client satisfaction. 100% client satisfaction. Anything less than that is unacceptable. 100% client satisfaction. So let's talk about how that's going to happen. First, everything we do is in writing. So client agreements are in writing. You have the first agreement, which is between you and them. And we said you can change it the way you want. You can change pricing. You can change other content if you want. So the first agreement we have is between you and the client to buy the Shelf Corp. The second agreement is between us and the client to get them funding, to get them financing, and that's consistent with what we set up here. So you might say, well, why does this make sure that people are happy? Well, it clarifies expectation. You know, we don't want someone to enroll and say, well, you promised me a prostate massage. No, Joe, we didn't promise you a prostate massage. I'm sure you'd like one. Who wouldn't? But it's not included, right? So that's the first thing, is making sure, and anyone that ever say that we're a scam, it's the opposite of that, right? What kind of scam would put everything in writing so we're held responsible? Like the 100,000 promise. That's in writing. That's not just some lip service that we give on a Zoom every morning. So first of all, we put everything in writing. Secondly, we schedule calls. So if you ever have a client say, oh, I can't get a hold of my advisor, that's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. We have a scheduling link. So every one of our advisors has one. Here's mine. Mine is calendly.com 4-week funding. So if it's scheduled, I'll do everything I can to call it. Things can happen on occasion where I miss a call, but it's very rare. Most cases, if you have a client that comes back and says, oh, they didn't call me, that's usually wrong. I had a client last week said, why didn't you call me? And then so I went and looked, and I did call her. It was on my call log. And then anytime I miss a client scheduled call, I'll immediately email them, sorry I missed you, please reschedule. So I'm kind of covering my behind by both calling them, and then if they don't answer, documenting it. So I'm not saying we're perfect, but for communication, it should not be hard for clients to communicate with us. Clients should be scheduling with their advisor. Here is my scheduling link. I'll have people that are incompetent, and they'll say, well, that link doesn't work. No, it does work. It does work. All right. Now, let's say that, our agreements are in writing and we're scheduling calls, but let's say someone's just dissatisfied. They just feel that we did not do what we promised to do. Well, shame on us. But if there is ever an unresolved issue, all of our agreements have binding arbitration. Binding arbitration is popular in business. It's not to go complain to some third party. It's not to bitch and moan. It's to say, hey, business paralegal or 509, you didn't do what you promised to do. I'm dissatisfied with the outcome. Let's resolve it. And we say, great, let's resolve it because we want you to be happy. But there can be instances where there's difference of opinion and what they think is different than what we think. However, what's really interesting is, as of this morning, maybe it could change today, but through all the years and all the thousands of clients we've worked with, we have not even had one ever ask for arbitration. So typically, when you hear the noisy, angry villagers that, we don't do what we say that we'll do, it's usually not true, because there's two sides to every story. I had a client yesterday, he sent out an email and said, no one gets funding. So it's like, well, that's not true, of course. But I actually went and looked at his file. He got funded. Not only did he get offers, he literally got funded, and he's going out there telling the world no one gets funding. So be careful and get all of your facts before you come to any conclusions. But we want 100% client satisfaction. If we can't get there normally, organically, then we're going to use arbitration, which is normal. It's not like punitive. It's not like mean. It's faster, cheaper, easier than going to court. And all I can say is, if someone felt that we've not done everything that we've promised, why haven't they done what they promised, which is allow us to sit down with an independent arbitrator? Oh, okay, we're almost done here. Guarantees. So if you're a reseller and you go out and make promises to the client, that's between you and them. I don't know about that, but I know the guarantees that we make as part of the funding process. Because remember, we said there's two different agreements. There's the reseller agreement. The reseller agreement is based around getting them a shelf corp. And that's very clear. It's just a set of deliverables that we should be able to do 100% of the time. There should be never, ever, ever an instance that we can't deliver 100% of the shelf corp deliverables. When you go into the financing, there's more moving parts and more variability. But what we promise, what we guarantee is at least 100,000. Now, most clients want more and most get more, but we promise at least 100,000. We'll work with them to get at least 100,000. So so the guarantees are based around what's written in the two different agreements: the reseller agreement with the client, which is shelf corp purchase agreement, and then the funding agreement. If you're not familiar with both, you probably should read them. This ties back to that, just to reiterate: two client agreements, one with the reseller for the shelf corp, one with us for financing. You should have read both so you know. Well, some people might say, well, that program's not legitimate. It's not real. It's a scam. Well, that's nonsense. But how would we confirm that it's legitimate? Well, first you want to just stop and look at the proposition, right? It's very basic. If people want business funding, you need to have a fundable business, and most of these people don't have a fundable business. If they did have a fundable business, frankly, they wouldn't need us. They should be down at the bank right now filling out the paperwork for their new $1 million loan. So what we do makes sense. It follows financial principles that we all learned in school or should have learned in school. So in writing, again, we promise to provide participants a fundable business, step one, and then secondly, to use that to get them at least 100,000 in funding. Well, that makes sense. Not too good to be true, not craziness. Secondly, our founders, the three of us, Mark, Chuck, and myself, we all worked at the SBA through the local SBDC offices. This is what we did as government employees. So it's not like we're making something up of how to make, a potion to cure cancer, which that's nothing to make light of. But what we're following are the same principles that the finance world follows. And it makes sense. We're following legal and financial principles. And then going back to the angry villager yesterday, well, you guys don't loan any money. That's true. We are not a lender. We are not lenders. We're not lenders. The world doesn't need another lender. The problem is most of these people are not fundable. They don't meet the fundability guidelines. They don't meet the underwriting guidelines to get approved. That's our role. That's what we do as technical advisors, is legally and ethically help people become fundable. And we do that through written agreements, and we should be doing it 100% of the time. And if we ever fail to do that, then the client first should reach out to us and say, hey, I'm not happy, so we could resolve it. And if we don't resolve it, then shame on us. Then we need to go to arbitration, which has never happened because we do what we promise to do. All right, so we're not lenders. The world doesn't need another lender. Background advisors. So again, we're going to be hiring more coordinators when our new building is built. They're giving us an estimate of about 7 weeks from now. We should be ready to move in. We'll see. That's a pretty aggressive timeline, and we'll be hiring more advisors like myself. But let's go back. Background. Are we qualified? Well, I think so. All of us have at least a graduate level business education, like an MBA is the most common. And all of us either went to law school or at least completed a paralegal certificate. And so that kind of ties to the name business, paralegal. Okay, so there's education there to start, which is not all and everything, but that's where we start. All of us have relevant employment experience. All of us have either worked at the SBA and or a large accounting firm. Now, I worked for the SBA and I worked for Deloitte at a graduate school. All of us are credible on paper. All of us must have and maintain at least a 720 FICO score. And I know FICO scores can go a lot higher than that, but I'm just saying that you're not going to have someone working on your account that's a bottom dweller. We have to have a clean criminal history, and we have to have ultimately a passion for helping others. So we're qualified to do what we do. Now, resellers, they don't really need to have a whole lot of qualifications. All they need to do is to be able to accurately explain the proposition and get people signed up. So, am I saying all of our resellers have MBAs? Am I saying all of our resellers have high credit scores? No, it's not a prerequisite. They're not working with the client on the financing portion. They're just getting the client into the system. All right, so with that being said, let's see what questions you all have. But again, key information, use the text line for the most immediate response. Now that we're not promising that we have someone 24/7. We have people that try to reach us at midnight on Christmas Day and wonder why we're not answering. Well, we're a business, and so businesses normally work business hours, but you're welcome to text at any time 24/7. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. You're welcome to call, but that's not the recommendation. Like, have you ever had an issue with Google or Facebook? They don't even give you a phone number. So we're not promising to be great at answering or responding to phone calls. Now, if you schedule one, we definitely need to make it. New email for me, again, which is important to make note. All right, so let's look through the notes you all have and see if there's anything that we need to cover. Franz asks if it's recommended as resellers to get a nonprofit. No, it's up to you. As a reseller, you'll probably want to run your business through a business entity, but you could run it through a nonprofit or for-profit. That is up to you. Let's see. Let's see. Limit to the grant amount. So yes, there is a limit. Troy's asking about limit. So what did we say? Resellers determine how much they're going to sell the Shelf Corp for. So they set their own pricing. At this point, the grant will reimburse up to 15,000 for the Shelf Corp. I do think that that's going to go up to 20,000 as of tomorrow, in fact. But right now, it's up to 15,000. So the reimbursement max per Shelf Corp purchase, Troy, is currently 15,000, but it'll be 20,000 come tomorrow. Kenya says that I am her reseller and I charged her $1,000 up front. No, that's not possible. It's not possible because the agreements we send out are all through our contractual system and there's no upfront cost through us. So I apologize, but that's a misunderstanding on your end. Antonio asks wholesale cost. So the wholesale cost of the Shelf Corp is 10,000. That's what it cost us to deliver a Shelf Corp. Anything that you want to mark up above that is your profit. Most of you are charging 15,000, thus 5,000 markup, and that's where you see us make these references. But if you want to charge clients more than that, that is fine. And with the state directors, I think that will move to 20. Let's go back down to state directors. I think the norm will move as of tomorrow to 20,000 because you got to do the math, right? If we're paying out 5,000 to the reseller and we're paying out 5,000 to the state director, and we need 10,000 to cover our cost. So that's a good point, Antonio. As of tomorrow, the norm will be 20,000, but the wholesale cost is 10,000. That's not changing. Doug asks, can he be a reseller and buy a Shelf Corp from himself? Yes, of course. Let's see. Oh, banking. So Kenya's asking about banking. So there's been some changes, and I know you don't care too much about it, but so there are no investors with 509 Pacific. We do have investors with Business Paralegal. I know you probably don't care, but the end result is yes, we have investors. Investors dictate some of our policies. So the investors have us on this new website and new email account, and we've also changed banking relationships. So we're now working with a different bank. We're no longer working with Wells Fargo. Why? Because that's what the investors want. When you have investors, they're like bosses, and in a little bit of a different way. So that's correct. If you don't have the current banking information, text us and we can make sure you have the right banking information. But we no longer are banking with Wells Fargo. Celino's asking about success stories. And so this is the most difficult thing. So many of you will ask for success stories, and we've had different trainings where we went through. But the problem is this, is that as soon as you go out and you give a success story, Susan got 150,000, then people tend to internalize, well, Susan got 150,000 in 3 days, then I should get it. And so sometimes we work with individuals, Celino, that are not as financially sophisticated as you. So you and I might say, hey, this is a case study or this is a success story. But a lot of these people, they'll say, oh, that's what I should get. That's a deliverable. And so then when their circumstances are different, then we're like the bad guys. So I can tell you, when we worked at the SBA, we didn't give out success stories. We sell on the process. We have guaranteed outcomes, but you have to be really, really careful about giving success stories, because a lot of people that are less financially sophisticated than you will say, oh, that's the guarantee now. So you got to be so careful about that, Celino. Christopher's asking about overrides. So yes, if you want to earn overrides, absolutely. And that's the whole thing we talked about, state directors. So if you want to earn overrides, you'd become a state director. It didn't cost anything. And then you have a team of resellers underneath you. They get paid $5,000 plus 5%. You get the same. And how would you take action on that? Text us, right? The text line is the way to reach us. Joe's got questions about his account. So, Joe, what are you going to do? You're not going to ask them on a Zoom where we have 951 people about your personal information, Joe. What you're going to do is either schedule or text. Underwriting guidelines. Okay, so, and we'll close with this. Troy's asking about underwriting. So the reseller is going to sell the Shelf Corp for whatever price they want. In the end, it's free, but nothing up front normally. And then we had that process down here. So you, as the reseller, will enroll a client, and then we're going to send them a finance app via email. It's going to come from support@guaranteedfunding.org. We're going to copy you on it, and then they're going to fill that out. So Troy's asking, what's the underwriting criteria? Well, so there's two different phases of funding, right? There's the first phase where we're just trying to get them money to pay you for the Shelf Corp. And then the other is after they have paid you and they have the Shelf Corp, going for the larger business funding. Troy's questions about this initial financing. So we have a consortium of about 40 different lenders. Now, we're not limited to just those 40, but we have about 40 different lenders that want to loan money to help people buy Shelf Corp. Each of them have their own underwriting, and they don't give us great detail. So it's a good point that Troy asked. We had an angry person yesterday that said that they didn't get any offers for buying their Shelf Corp, and they were mad at us, like we were the bad people. But this one individual, he has zero income. So how would we ever go to a lender and say, lender, we've got this client, great person, great guy, love him like a brother, but he has absolutely no money to pay you back, but he wants to get a loan to buy a Shelf Corp from our reseller. So unless we use a lender that uses stated income, which we have some, but it's actually, frankly, not part of that main consortium. The main consortium, they're going to typically validate income. If we have someone that doesn't have documented income, then we need to know that, and we're going to need to move them into a more of a self-reported stated income basis. But Troy's question is real simple. What's it going to take for the client to get approved for financing to buy a Shelf Corp from you? Well, as you would expect, it's going to come down to income and credit, but there's not specific dollar amounts that I can give you, or credit scores, FICO scores, because it varies by lender and they don't always tell us. And it often, credit approvals often have less to do with the credit score and more to do with the profile itself. So enroll everyone you can. We'll get them an application. And if they can't get approved directly, I'm confident we'll find a way to get them financing one way or the other. All right. With that, we covered a lot of information. But again, I have a new email as of today. If you use an old email, don't expect a response. Best way to get help, to get assistance, is to either schedule a call or to just simply text. Text, obviously, texting support. And you notice it's the same number for both organizations for the text line support, because what we don't want is you or the client to say, well, I don't know who to ask this question to. Don't worry about that. You get the question into the text line, we'll get back with you. But for more detailed conversation, certainly scheduling a call is the way to go. All right, thanks everyone. Sorry we ran long, but some really important information to cover. Have a great day. No Zoom tomorrow on Tuesday, and then we'll be back on Wednesday. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.